As anyone associated with government knows but rarely likes to admit, it's easy to spend money, but it's hard to make a difference. In few areas is this fundamental truth more obvious than in education. As NAPLAN, which is the standardised test results released today, show, the academic performance of Australian students has flatlined over the past decade, despite taxpayers spending an extra $20 billion a year on Australian schools. Now, that bears repeating. Let's look at those numbers in detail. In 2007-08, as a nation, so state and federal governments across government and non-government schools, we spent $36.4 billion. In 2016-17, it was $57.7 billion. As a comparison, just 1 year of national education spending is equivalent to the complete rollout of the NBN, or more than we're spending on 12 new state-of-the-art submarines. And over 10 years, this $20 billion per annum increase in education spending to take it up to almost $60 billion, well, what's that achieved? According to today's NAPLAN results, very little. The student performances scarcely improved. Now, over the past decade, we've had smaller class sizes, we've had better school facilities, higher teacher salaries, and we've had more teaching resources than ever before. But the one thing that all of this was supposed to mean, better academic scores for our kids, well, that just hasn't happened. Since 2011, average NAPLAN scores for Year 7 and Year 9 students in writing have declined, while average secondary school scores for reading, spelling, grammar and punctuation, it's reported, as well as numeracy, I have to say, also have not changed. So pulling all of this together, Australian school students today are no better academically than Australian school students a decade ago, despite the extra $20 billion. That's bad for Australian taxpayers, but what's worse, in my view, is the fact that our kids rate so poorly compared to children in other countries where not nearly as much is spent. A 2017 UN survey found that Australia ranked 39th out of 41 high and middle income countries in achieving a quality education. We might have been ahead of Romania and Turkey at 40 and 41 respectively, but we were behind almost everyone else, including countries like Bulgaria, Chile and Lithuania. Of course, the response of the teacher unions to all of this has been utterly predictable. They don't think teachers need to lift their game, nor should we have to get back to teaching the basics. Instead, there's been renewed calls today for NAPLAN to be abolished. But having worked in government policy for many, many years, let's be very clear. You don't measure something, you can't improve it, particularly when it comes to an area as mammoth as education. Parents have a right to know if their children's school is up to scratch or not, if the teachers they put their trust in are delivering results or not. They even need to know if their child is not pulling its weight in class or not knuckling down to do the work needed to get ahead. As we've often discussed here on the show, better schools are a function of many things, like more autonomy from principals, less control from bureaucrats, more parental involvement, a more academically challenging curricula. Most of all, I think, good teachers. Now, isn't that where we want our money spent? It's what you spend the money on in education that counts, not just how much you spend. Did you know that last year a study found that as late as 2015, half of all places offered in teaching degrees went to students in the bottom 50% of school leavers? Now, higher entry scores for teaching degrees would help, getting more high achievers into teaching through programs like Teach for Australia, that's good too. Higher salaries for teachers would help. But of course, you'd have to limit that to the best performing teachers, not everyone. But in the end, it's the state governments that have to lift their game, because schools are the core business of the states. And that starts with ministers running school systems and principals being allowed to properly run their schools. It means better standards for teachers. It means getting parents more involved in their child's school and what they're taught. And it means, most of all, clearing out the junk from the curriculum to refocus on getting the basics right. But whatever happens, NAPLAN's testing regime must stay. The fact that the unions want it gone to protect their expensive mediocrity of our education system should tell us everything we need to know.